Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. Before we get started, just wanted to give a quick disclaimer. Griffin's camera had just a little bit of technical difficulties, so he won't be on camera during the podcast, but you'll still hear his voice, and you'll still see me and Josh. But just wanted to give you a quick heads up before we get into it.
This is the Arroyo Podcast. We are your hosts, and I'm feeling good today. How are you guys?
Us too.
Yeah.
I'm feeling really good.
Yeah,
I'm excited for today's pod.
Me
too.
Actually. Yeah,
It's going to be good.
We got some good content, cooking up some fun things.
Some of which I have no idea what it's going to be, but
Right.
I love walking in blind.
Well, a fun way to start the podcast, I think we should react. We have a video to react to. So
Yeah.
let's just naturally transition very quickly to do that.
Let's start it.
Yeah, let's
All
do
right.
it.
I want to see this. What do we got? What do we got cooking? Oh, okay.
Hey
There
everybody,
we
just a little update about the religion that we're starting.
Oh,
It's going to be pretty cool. I've been
Alrighty,
getting the
cool.
input from all kinds of people from different religions, Catholics, Protestants, Buddhists, Muslims, Jewish people,
Feeling
everyone,
emotion.
even Unitarians.
watching the music.
And we've been compiling a different list of things that we like from each religion and things that we don't like. So we're going to be picking all the best parts of each religion and leaving the crap behind, the sexist part, the homophobic part. We're not going to include any of that. Nobody's going to be allowed to pin down babies and circumcise them, for example, in our religion.
Wow,
and
okay.
everybody's going
Did
to,
not
of course,
expect
have to be
that.
striving.
That escalated
Direction.
as possible. It's going to be awesome.
That
We're
sounds
going to
awesome.
have potlucks every Sunday after
potlucks?
service. It's going to be dancing. It's going to be amazing. Let us know your comments. What do you want to include?
Where do I
I
RSVP?
want to include. I want to.
I want to pop.
Well, I want a suggestion. I want to include
I
something.
love that.
Yeah.
That's what
no,
she said. What's
there's
the-
a lot to be said there.
Right.
And the first thing I would say is this, is number one, what makes you think that you have the right to start a religion by talking to all the other religions and saying, let me just cherry pick from each one what I like and don't like, and then synthesize it all into what I think the truth is. Jesus said, right, you shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father but by me. Jesus is saying, I am truth and I am the way to God. And, this is something that can be offensive when it comes to the gospel, but it's just true. Jesus is saying, I'm the only way to God. I'm the only way to get to heaven. I'm the only way to find purpose in life. So any other way, it's a dead end.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately, we live in this postmodern world where truth doesn't really exist anymore. So truth can just be something you make
It's
up.
just fluid.
When really, when it comes to Scripture, truth is actually something that you don't make up. Truth is something you discover.
Right.
And truth isn't just something you discover, but is actually a person, Jesus Christ. And he was revealed to us and can be discovered by us. If we seek him, we'll find him. So, yeah.
There's a lot of contradiction there.
There is.
If you pick apart all the religions and try to mesh them, they don't work in harmony with one another. They
Right.
actually, especially Christianity, in
Yeah.
alignment with all the other religions that she was.
Well, that's why
naming.
she's only taking the part she likes,
Yeah.
right?
But I wonder which.
But if there's
part-
dancing in a potluck, I'm there.
Yeah, exactly. It is curious what she means by best parts, because the best part of Christianity is the fact that Jesus died for your sins, and now you get
Right.
to be
Yeah.
in the presence of God. So
I have
is
a
that
feeling.
the best
I'm
part?
having a feeling that that's probably not the best part to
Right.
her, because in order to believe that, you have to admit that you're a sinner.
Right.
And I don't know. There's just something about the way she talked.
Right.
I don't think she'd be willing to admit herself and admit that the rest of the
Right.
world are sinners in need of being saved. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that'd be her best part. My guess is she'd probably take the golden rule, And this is what a lot of people like this. Let's just take some of the ethical teachings of Jesus, right? Treat others how
Right.
you would want to be treated. Jesus didn't come primarily as a teacher. He came primarily as a savior. Jesus came to seek and to save the lost, right? To give his life as a ransom for many. So did Jesus come to teach? Yes. Are there things we could learn practically in our lives from his teaching? Yes. But is that the primary reason for which he came? No. The primary reason for which he came was to die on the cross for our sins and rise again 3 days later. His teachings show us how to live. But on top of that, his teachings also reveal to us the fact that we're sinners and are in need of a savior.
Right.
I mean, look to the Sermon on the Mount, where you find many of those ethical teachings it's an indictment on us.
Yeah.
Because none of us fully live the Sermon on the Mount. No one should read the Sermon on the Mount and be like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea, and I could fully live that out, right? You're the most arrogant person in the world if you read it that way.
Right.
You should read it and be like, oh, I'm toast.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No. And this sounds, what's actually interesting about culture though? Even if you're maybe not a Christian, you might look at that and be like, I'm not a Christian and I think that's crazy, but I think we also do that sort of ideology, even if we don't admit it, like creating our own religion. I just want to pull the best of this to create what works for me, right?
Well, I think that's the prosperity gospel. I think it's a lot of things that are false teachings in Christianity. It's God is no longer God, you are God.
Right.
Because that's what you're doing when you're creating your own religion or your own worldview. You're not looking to God to show you who he is or who you are or how you should see the world. Mm-hmm. You're just saying, well, let me stand in the place of God and define reality as I want it to be rather than what it actually is. Yep. And I think that's just the trap that we continually fall into as humanity, because ultimately that's just rooted in pride.
Right. Yeah, totally.
That's what this is. Like, she seems really nice and, let's dance and potluck and party and let's take the best of every religion. But actually, that was what she said was probably the most prideful thing I could ever hear somebody say.
Because it's all me. It's what I want.
It's all about me, what I want. And also, I'm in the position of God and I can define what truth is.
Right.
That's extremely prideful.
Totally.
Yeah. So I don't even think Buddha would approve of that.
I don't think so either. I don't think most religions would approve of that. What are you going to say, Griff?
Yeah, I know. I just think it's actually a really good depiction of what the cultural temperature is in a lot of ways, because reality and truth is so moldable to whatever we want it to be, at least from many people's worldview. Is that to many people, I actually think that video wouldn't be as controversial as you'd think.
Right.
A lot of people that are secular, or maybe they're not even affiliated with any kind of worldview, would say, like, I don't see the problem with that.
Right.
Yeah. Why wouldn't we just take all the religions and jumble them up and take the best parts and have a potluck and dance and have a good time? Like, what's the issue with that? And it very obvious.
Well, I would even ask her, like, if I was with her in the room, she's saying, to your point earlier and kind of what you were just saying too, Griff, like, well, I'll take the good parts and we're going to leave out all the bad parts. Well, I would ask her, what do you mean by good and what do you mean by bad?
I think there's
and
some
where does
real
your standard
hurt
from
there.
Good come from, and where does your standard for bad come from? What's your ultimate authority? And ultimately, it goes back to the pride thing. Her ultimate authority is her own preferences.
Right.
And that's where a lot of the world is at today.
Right.
And so we have people like the biggest group and segment in American culture when it comes to spirituality right now. It's not atheists, and it's also not people that would identify as Christians. The fastest growing religious segment are spiritual nuns, people that say that they're spiritual, but they don't necessarily prescribe to any one religion. Basically, people like her. She's kind of an extreme version of that. But basically, most people want to believe today is, you know what, I want some spirituality, maybe I'll look at the moon and, look at my sign and maybe have some crystals or attend church once a month or pray to God vaguely when I'm having a hard day. But I'm not actually going to really seek him out and find him in his word or be a part of a church that's taking, the Bible seriously. I'm kind of be spiritual on my own terms. And unfortunately, the only thing and the only person really that can make you right with God and help you have the hope of heaven and a purpose for living is in Jesus and Jesus alone. It's not a made-up religion or a made-up spirituality. It's him. So I don't know. Any other thoughts on that?
My only question is if they're creating cool jackets, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that
is tempting.
That would be tempting to get a cool jacket.
Jacket, potluck,
and dancing.
My feeling is that
the
jacket,
potluck was something that
my feeling is that that jacket is going to have a rainbow
Yeah.
on it, and it's not the rainbow from after the flood. So I think I'll pass on the jacket.
Wow.
What were you saying though?
The potluck is one thing, but I'm hung up on the dancing. What kind of dancing is going to be?
I mean, if you're bringing in
these
some of the
gatherings?
Eastern religions, some Buddhism or maybe some Hinduism,
we should start dancing more.
And then
at
you're
church.
bringing in some of the Catholicism and stuff. There's some. I mean, I don't know if she's bringing in some Baptist stuff. I mean, some Baptists believe dancing is of the devil, so I don't know. I guess she took that
probably not.
I must have skipped over the David dancing.
Yeah,
Joy of the Lord kind of verse. But even hearing that too, I I think there's a lot of hurt behind that as well.
Yeah.
You know, that I think that worldview, and just hearing her talk, you can kind of sense that there's a good deal of resentment towards
she said no
institutions.
What did she say? No sexism or racism or whatever. Yeah. So obviously she thinks that these religions have that.
Putting these people and worldviews into this box that she has that probably has harbored some pain or resentment or hurt.
Yeah.
So I feel sad for her, but also
she needs to encounter the real
the real Jesus,
the real gospel.
Yeah.
Maybe she hasn't just rejected it, but that's also possible too. But she ultimately needs what we all need, which is a real encounter with the God who loves us.
Yeah, and maybe she's had some conflict with Christians before or other believers from other religions, which I think is a good segue to, I think, what we want to talk about today, which is how to navigate conflict.
Whoa. From our relationship sermon
we're in a series.
I think you just shifted topics really well. Really well.
So,
nice.
One of the things that we talked about.
We're going to have to give him a pay raise for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
From 0 to 0.
Yeah. Know when to steer clear.
Ooh.
One of the concepts that you talked about on Sunday that I think was really important and is super pivotal, I think, for navigating conflict is knowing kind of when to decide, am I stepping into this? Is this worth potentially having a conflict over, or should I just not throw it under the rug, but allow for there to be grace to move on from it and to not allow it to be more than it actually is. Yeah. So I think that was actually a really helpful thing that maybe we can kind of talk about. Like,
the book of Proverbs talks about how starting a fight is like breaching a dam. So it says, stop the dispute before an argument breaks out. So basically, if you start a fight in your life will be flooded by conflict. Mm-hmm. And so before you allow that dam to be broken and your life to be flooded by conflict, what Solomon is basically writing about in Proverbs is he's saying, hey, there are some instances, not every instance, right? Because we're going to get to the next point, I think, where we talk about actually going through conflict and actually going through it with people. But there are a lot of times where the conflict should never even be started in the first place, that you actually need to steer clear of the conflict. And I'm even wondering, like, what are some examples or maybe stories from your guys' life or just from other people that you've seen of situations where I was like, man, I went into that conflict and I should have never entered into it. I should have steered clear. And I really made a mistake kind of taking that step. I mean, I know for me...
Why don't you speak? Why don't you expose yourself here?
Expose myself. Okay, yeah. I'll expose myself. Well, I think there's been times in my life where I steered clear and I saved myself a lot of pain and a lot of heartache, and I'm really thankful for that. And then there's been other times where I didn't steer clear, and when I should have been acting more like a surgeon and kind of carefully proceeding, it was more like a person with like a big club or a big axe kind of just slashing through, and it wasn't helpful. I mean, especially earlier on, I think in my leadership as a lead pastor of a church, and like when I first started out at Arroyo, which used to be called East Hills 3 years ago, like...
Well, and before that, it was East Hills Community.
East Hills Community Church, that's right. Yeah. And, as a young pastor that's coming into a church that was founded in 1907 and it had been around for a long time, and there are a lot of leaders and different people that had been around for a long time, and I was making some changes, and there were some people that were really upset with me or really resistant towards me or what I felt like God was leading me to do. And there were some instances where I steered clear and it saved me, but there were also some instances where I either should have steered completely clear of the conflict, or I should have entered the conflict but in a more gentle, tactile, loving, grace and truth type of way. But instead I just kind of went in and just went right at it and kind of attacked and was just like, nope, this is why you're wrong. This is why you're hurting the church. Like, just, yeah. And what it did was I attacked them. And so what happened is either they would attack me back. It would cause trust to be broken. And so what I would just say is before you enter into a conflict, you kind of have to ask the question, is it worth it? What are you gaining? What are you losing by entering into the conflict? If you go into it, like, is it worth it? What's actually going to be accomplished? Are you seeking to get closer to them by going through the conflict and addressing an issue that's maybe keeping you from being close to the person? Or is your business going to profit more by going through this conflict? Like, what is it that you're going to gain by going through this conflict? Because if you're just going through the conflict just because you're angry in the moment, or your pride is hurt, or you're annoyed with the person and you're just reacting emotionally rather than responding lovingly, I think that's when you get into trouble. And like, I think about it even in your marriages. I mean, what are times where you could have steered clear of the conflict, but you went into the conflict? Right? I mean, almost every day with Jamie and I, like, there are times where I enter into a conflict with her, like an argument with her, and it's like, I should have just been loving and probably just moved on and not said anything. And man, it's like egg on my face, right? I messed up. But
I think a lot of the times, we jump into conflicts that we don't need to because we're trying to win a conversation or win the war that we think that we're in, and instead of trying to win, what ends up happening is we try to win and then we end up becoming losers because we hurt the relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
And
so what are you gaining? What are you losing?
Yeah.
If you're going into it for the wrong reasons, you might just lose the relationship and not actually gain anything.
Right.
Bro.
Yeah.
So you don't need to be right. You don't need to be right all the time. And you don't need to prove that other people are wrong.
Yeah.
And just because
or point out every wrong thing they've done. I think sometimes we can become nitpicky, especially with the people that are closest to us, whether it's our wives or our siblings or our coworkers or our boss or like whoever we're closest with. Like, it could be easy to like kind of get nitpicky with people and get into those conflicts easily, rather than like, there are some times where it's like, you know what, just, it doesn't mean it was right, but just forgive them in your heart and move forward. And you don't have to bring up everything they did wrong. You don't have to do it.
Right.
What do you think, Coda?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I have anything of value to add here because I agree with all of that.
No, it's
I'm
good.
trying to think. I mean, the only thing I'm thinking of is when I am in those moments of the choice to, steer clear or not steer clear, and I choose to not steer clear.
Yeah.
It comes from a pretty evil place, like a very like selfish place of I'm wanting to almost either punish them for whatever reason that I have, right? Or but it doesn't come from like just that I want them to hear me.
How about this?
You know what I mean?
When you're on the football field and you're playing flag football, and a guy trash talks you, you're a competitive person. Have there been times where you steered clear and then times where you didn't steer clear?
I actually steer clear a lot more on the football field than my marriage, which is pretty sad to say out loud. That's very sad to say out loud, actually.
Well, we tend to hurt the people that we're closest to the most.
That's the crazy part to me is that like when you're in that, it's like, I mean, it's an evil thing that kind of takes you over, and it's not even coming from, I just want them to understand me. It's coming from like no, you need to feel this because I felt some other certain way,
Yeah.
I think too, for me, something that I've been trying to do to strategize around getting to in my feelings has been, okay, if this is a feeling that I have, is this going to fade away or is it going to stay? Yeah. And if I know that it's like, I've been trying to help myself with that, is going, okay, am I just in my feelings right now? Because if so, I'm gonna allow myself to ride the wave and not jump into this conflict head first. And so sometimes what you need to do is kind of coach yourself through it and be able to go, okay, if I can decipher through my feelings and say, I don't think it's worth it, and be able to step back from the situation, I think a lot of the times, like, you probably are going to deal with less conflict. Because if you're able to identify, man, this is just a temporary feeling, and go, okay, I'm feeling a lot of things right now, but I'm going to ride this wave until it passes. And when it does, I'm going to maybe assess it a little bit more with a clear head.
I want to bring up something kind of different. Because you brought up Sermon on the Mount in the beginning, we were talking about the TikTok we were watching. Do you feel
the red glass lady?
That's good.
Yeah, the red glass lady. Yeah, exactly. My new pastor is what I actually call him.
Yes.
Actually, we do have an announcement on the
Yeah.
podcast. That Arroyo Church is bringing on a new staff member.
Yeah, that's right. Oh my God.
Yeah,
Don't even joke about that.
Stop.
she's actually going to be my co-lead pastor.
Co-lead pastor. That's great.
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
that's
we're going to
good.
share the load in the pulpit.
That's nice. I can't wait. I'm excited.
Yeah,
You guys should
Anyways.
do a panel.
Yeah, you guys should do a panel co-teaching.
Sorry.
yeah, I'm going to hire her and then fire her the next day.
Jeez.
Wow,
Okay,
jeez.
that escalated.
That is not steering clear. That's actually going
you-
straight
that-
into conflict.
you-
You're choosing conflict.
You did not ride the
Right,
wave.
exactly. Anyways, in the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus gives all these metaphors about if somebody slaps you, turn the other cheek.
Yes.
If someone, and he's talking about like if a Roman soldier asks you to carry his bag,
Yeah,
carry it too.
that's steering
all of
clear.
those things, right? Is
That's
that
good.
would you how would you relate that to?
Well, I think
kind of
that's
this whole
exactly
steer
what
clear.
I think that's exactly
idea.
what we're talking about, right? He's saying, listen, if somebody slaps you, turn the other cheek. That's steering clear. That's saying, hey, listen, they wronged you, but you need to love them. And I think that just gets back to the heart of the gospel, right? What does Jesus say on the cross? Father, forgive them. They know not what they're doing. And he's talking to the people that literally put him on that tree, that nailed his hands to it. And so
Yep.
I think it's forgiving, and I think it's not continuing the conflict or starting the conflict.
I think it's
rather
even
than-
deeper, and Jesus is saying an even harder thing, and it actually goes beyond steering clear, right? I actually
It does.
think
It does
steering
go.
clear.
It goes beyond it.
Goes beyond that, where Jesus tells you to not only steer clear, but take the pain that may have caused
Yeah.
you and go, why did they do that? Maybe they need help. Actually,
Yeah.
They asked me to carry their bag a mile. They're probably tired, and I should probably carry it too, even though they're coming from oh my gosh, what word am I looking for? A motivation of maybe trying to hurt me, but
Yeah.
look beyond that. Jesus says,
Yeah, and that's what
Bless those who
Jesus
curse you.
even.
Yeah.
Jesus talks about their ignorance. They don't even know what they're doing.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Right?
When
He's
on the
like,
cross,
they're
yeah.
just sinful people, and like sometimes there's somebody that's hurt you, and they don't even know they've hurt you.
Yeah.
Sometimes they've hurt you, and it's not because they want to, it's because they're hurting you out of their own hurt. And I think when we understand other people's perspectives, it allows us to see them as a human rather than just an enemy.
Yeah.
And it allows us to steer clear of that conflict. But then there are times where we shouldn't steer clear of the conflict. So what do you guys think about that? Obviously there's times where we should steer clear. But what, and maybe I could ask the question this
That's
way.
very interesting.
What is it that merits you to not steer clear and to enter into the conflict? Because I had somebody ask me a really interesting question after church this week that kind of got to that heart.
Yeah. And now
Because there are some people that would you agree that the majority of the people out of their flesh and like selfishness or being scared, probably fear, naturally steer clear?
Oh yeah.
Because when actually they should go through it.
Right.
So maybe this is actually an even more important question. Like, when should you
And I think when you
go
say
through it, and how do you know?
And I think it's important to call out,
Yeah.
and kind of working off the idea that I just brought up from the Sermon on the Mount, is because when you first said let's talk about not steering clear, like when you enter into the conflict,
Yeah.
my initial reaction is defending myself. Like, oh, when is it time to defend myself?
Yeah.
Oh, when is it time to rebuke them? Oh, when is it time? But I actually think the first question is, when is it time, and it's almost always time, to do what Jesus just said and to ask to carry the bag a second mile. Enter into that conflict with that person and go, why do you feel this way? You know, I want to serve you actually first. I don't want to get defensive. I don't want to say, hey, get right into the rebuking. I actually want to serve them first. So anyway, that's how
good. I think if you
view
approach
that.
it with that heart,
Right.
it will go a whole lot better for you. And I think to the point of when do you know you should enter into the conflict or not? Again, I had somebody ask me an interesting question after church on Sunday. Shout out to Evie if she's listening. She's one of the longtime members of the church, was there before I got there. But she said, I have a lot of friends that have husbands.
Yeah.
And they feel like they're loving and sacrificing for them. But they don't feel like the husbands are loving and sacrificing for them. So it's like an
Okay.
unbalanced
So, yeah.
relationship.
Right.
And they feel very upset because they're turning the other cheek, they're loving them, they're serving them, and they've been steering clear of the conflict.
Yep.
But what do? And I was like, well, that's a great example, because I was like, that is when you should enter the conflict.
Yeah.
Because if there's this unbalance in the relationship, you go into the conflict not to kill the relationship, but so that you could have a closer relationship. And what I said in that situation was, listen, it's a conversation that looks like this. I love you. Obviously, that's why I married you. I am here to serve you, but this is how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that our relationship's unbalanced. I feel like I'm serving you this way, and this way, but I feel like you're neglecting me in these ways. And having an open and honest conversation about it, not attacking them, not demeaning them, not accusing them, but sharing how you feel and then letting them respond to that. Now, that's still conflict, but that's healthy conflict.
Yeah. It's working towards resolution.
Unhealthy conflict is, I do everything for you all the time.
You
You
did
never
this to
do
me.
anything for me.
Yeah.
You don't love me. You don't care about me. You're always this way. How dare you?
Yeah.
That's unhealthy conflict. Healthy conflict is going into it right with the right heart, like Matthew 5 says, where Jesus says, if you have somebody that has something against you, and you're giving a gift at the altar, he says, leave that gift, right? Go to that person so that you can what? Be reconciled, which is restored relationship. So it's going to that person, having that conversation, entering into that conflict with the heart of, I want this relationship to be reconciled. I want there to be restoration. Because harboring bitterness in your heart over a person that you have a relationship with, number one, you need to forgive them. But also, if it's something they're consistently doing in your life and it's a pattern, especially if it's your spouse or somebody you work closely with, you have to communicate that. Because if you don't communicate that to them out loud and enter into that conflict in a healthy way, if it doesn't get addressed, it's never, ever going to really have any progress.
A lot of the times.
Because they might even know. They might not even know.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the times the problem that people or marriages or relationships, what they run into is they can't solve the conflict because they're not actually trying to solve it. They're trying to prove themselves right. Mm-hmm. And instead of trying to prove yourself right, you need to learn how to make it right. And a part of doing that is the road to reconciliation, right? Is having the perspective of compassion, which moves you to wanting to reconcile with the person, understanding where they're coming from, and then desiring there to be restored relationship. And a lot of the times that doesn't happen because people are so concerned about their own pride, their own ego. You hurt me in this way. I'm going to show you what you did wrong and prove to you why and how it hurt, like how much, to the extent that this has hurt me. Yeah. And what ends up happening is you're actually not even getting to solutions. You're just trying to really put that person in a corner. And that's not right either. So there's a healthy way to, I think, to confront the conflict and kind of go through it without trying to belittle the other person or make them feel like their mistake is who they are. And so
no, I think that's super important.
Yeah.
You need to do it in a humble way, in a loving way. And I think this is just so applicable to so many areas in our life. Even in the workplace. Yeah. I mean, say there's an underperforming employee or somebody you need to fire or a coworker that is constantly undermining you during meetings or whatever. If it's a consistent pattern, like if it just happens once or twice, you should probably just steer clear. But if it's, I think the idea is if it's a consistent pattern or if it's an issue that needs to be brought up because it's literally having ramifications for other people or the organization as a whole, I think there comes a point as a leader or as a coworker that you do need to enter into that conflict in a loving way. Again, not in an accusing way, but you just say, hey, basically, based off your actions or based off what you've been saying, I just got to tell you what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling and how it's impacting me and others. And, this is what we're going to have to do based off of that. You're going to have to be fired or you're going to have to, basically be on probation for 90 days and you're going to have to perform better or you are going to be let go. Or I ask that you would please, make these adjustments, whatever it is. And I think so many people, when it comes to their workplace, they avoid those conflicts because it's uncomfortable. And I think there's a way to enter into that conflict in a healthy way. I even kind of had to do that this morning with somebody, and you were on that phone call, and it was
actually Dakota.
Yeah, I was the one delivering the news. He got to listen to me bear the news.
This is going to be my last podcast.
Dakota has been fired. No, it was the lady in the video earlier. I fired her this morning. No. It was what would be normally a really hard conversation. Now, this person is a very emotionally spiritual and mature person. So we had the conversation
rare.
with them, very rare, and I shared the news with them. And what could have been a very, very heavily contentious conversation wasn't, because I was able to share the truth and love with them and tell them, you know, where we needed to go and why we needed to go there. And they actually were like, oh, yeah, I agree. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think we're going into conflicts, and if we handle it the right way, there might not actually be any conflict.
Right.
But then other times you go into it and you do it the right way, and there still is.
Yeah.
And in that case, you just kind of got to deal with it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that gets to understanding the root of the conflict, right? Because in order to resolve it, you have to get to the root. And if you only operate under assumption about what the other person's perspective is, like in that situation, you had assumed, and oftentimes we do this, is like we jump to the worst conclusion. Oh, this person's going to be angry with me. Oh, this person has been handling this in this manner because of whatever feelings that you are assuming that they have.
Yeah.
You don't actually know that. You're interpreting that person
Yes.
based off of your own perspective,
Yeah.
not actually looking at reality and understanding the real root there. And so I think that's probably one of the most pivotal parts of resolving conflict, is getting to the root and being willing to actually get there in a loving way and open up a conversation without being accusatory or trying to like point the finger at them and be like, you did this, X, Y, and Z, explain yourself or whatever.
Yeah.
And just going like, hey, this happened? Can you help me understand this in a better way? I really want to, I care about you. I love you. I care about our relationship. Like, this is how it made me feel. Can you just explain this to me? Because I'm having a hard time, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Getting to the root, I think, is one of the most important things you can do.
No, it totally is, because if you don't get to the root of it, you can't understand it. And I think so many times, like you were saying, and oh my gosh, I've seen this happen so many times in our life, where you write a story about what the person is feeling or thinking about you, and then when you actually ask them the questions and have the conversation, sometimes you're like, oh yeah, I was right. But also a lot of times you're like either way off, or you're overblowing
in your
what
head.
actually is
Overthinking
the
it.
truth.
That's so true.
And so it's good to just not assume and to just ask questions. And I mean, that's what, the Bible tells us to do in James chapter 1. He says, everybody should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to get angry. And I think so many times we're the opposite, right? We're slow to listen, we're quick to speak, and we're quick to get angry. And I think when you're in a conflict, those Christ-like communication skills are so important, because when you learn to listen and ask questions rather than accuse, it diffuses the situation. It's like diffusing a bomb. Because if you just say, right, the Bible also says in Proverbs, a harsh word stirs up anger, but a gentle word turns away wrath.
Yep.
So if you say that harsh word, that accusatory word, you're going to stir up more anger, and you're going to make the bomb blow up.
Yeah.
But by asking the question, you're seeking understanding, and you're actually diffusing the bomb. I mean, think about it like if I'm having a conversation with you about something that we're upset about. This is totally hypothetical. This has never happened. No, we've had our fights over the years, right?
Sure.
Because we're brothers. We shared a room our whole lives, and now we work together and stuff. And I'd say we get along better than probably 95% of most brothers, especially brothers that would work together.
It's a very specific number, but
I don't know. I feel like we get along really well. But
do.
we've also had our conflicts over the years.
Yeah,
and
it's
things.
inevitable.
It's inevitable. It's called being a human and having relationships. And I feel like the times where we have gotten into conflicts, a lot of times it's because myself, maybe even sometimes you, but mainly myself, I would say.
Just kidding.
It's accusing rather than asking and listening. And I'm naturally not a good listener. So it's very easy for me to just say stuff rather than just say, hey, Griffin, what were you thinking, or how are you doing, or what are your thoughts on this? And I've just noticed in all my relationships, and my relationship with you is just one example, that when I ask those questions, you don't feel defensive. You're just like, oh, he's just wondering. And then it's so much better.
Yeah. Assumption always leads to division.
Yeah.
Negative assumption.
It's true.
But a positive assumption leads to unity.
That's right.
Yeah.
So when you think the best of another person, it's not a cliche. It's actually you actively deciding, I'm going to believe the best in that person, even though what they did looks kind of bad.
Yeah.
And it might have even hurt me in a way.
Yeah.
And instead of jumping to the conclusion of, oh, they're so blank, we fill in that blank. They're so this.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go, oh, you know what? I'm going to believe the best of them.
Yep.
I don't know the full story. I love
Yes.
this person. And I'm going to just understand further and wait and assume the best and get to the root. And oftentimes, more oftentimes than not, once you get to that root, you can actually relate to that person and understand it's like, oh, I've been there, I've done that, or I've had this feeling before, and it doesn't make it right, but you have the compassion that you can actually extend to them to kind of heal whatever is hurting in the relationship there. So,
Yeah, it's good. Side note, I'm surprised you love your alliterations when you're preaching. How did you not use kill the conflict at any point?
I did. I used it.
Did you?
Yeah.
I used it in the very intro. I only used it once, though.
Oh,
you
okay,
did.
okay.
Well,
I thought
you
that was going to be a
almost-
slide.
Wait, hold on. I almost titled the message.
Kill the conflict?
Yes.
How to
Did
kill
you?
conflict.
Yes,
And I
you did.
retitled it. I was talking
Wow.
to
know-
Yeah.
and I
You know
retitled
him
it
so
How to
well.
Navigate Conflict.
And I told him,
Ah.
I was like, that's too much.
Yeah.
It's a little too hard.
Kill the
But
conflict.
then I still
For the
said
title,
it in
for
the
the title.
intro. Because I said, instead of your conflict killing your relationships, you can have closer relationships when you go through your conflict.
Oh.
That's what I said.
Okay.
But it was
I
only
thought
one sentence.
there was
You
gonna be
were
a
probably
slide.
on
Oh.
yeah, no.
I thought there was going to be a slide that said,
It wasn't
kill
the main
conflict.
point. Yeah, no, it wasn't the main point. It was just like a sentence.
Pithy kind of.
Navigate conflict's better because it allowed you to make a lot of nautical.
That's what
Yes.
I
Metaphors.
said.
And that's what I did for the first
Yes.
2 points. Steer
There were
clear.
endless
Don't
nautical
always steer clear.
examples.
Go through. Navigate.
Yes.
Navigate. Participate.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we kind of mentioned active listening. Can we talk about that a little bit more? Maybe.
no, we can't. I don't want to hear it.
Stop. Right.
Yes.
Let me just talk over what
Yes.
you're going to say.
Yes.
Have you ever had an overactive listener? Yes.
Oh, wow. That's nerve-wracking.
yes.
You know, when Jamie and I, we had our
Yes.
first
I would
year.
rather have an overactive listener.
Can I talk? Can I talk?
No. Hey, can you stop? Hey, can you zip your lip? Take your top lip.
Shut your mouth.
Take your
mouth.
top lip.
What's that from?
Connect it with
Step
your
Brothers.
bottom
Step
lip.
Brothers. Okay, yeah. Pastor quoting Step Brothers. Listen, I watched it when I was in high school. Don't
Cut
judge
that
me.
out. Take your top lip.
No, we're not cutting that out. We're
and
leaving it in.
connect it to your bottom lip.
Shut your mouth.
Shut your mouth for a second.
Yeah, that's not active listening. That's the opposite.
Yeah.
No, but you know, when Jamie and I, when we were in our first year of counseling, and then first year of marriage, and went through counseling.
First year of counseling. So you've done multiple, you're 8
We had
years
like
into
we
counseling?
had counseling. Well, we've been married for I think
Yeah.
this will be our 8th year now.
That's
In a row. You've been married 8
crazy.
years in a row?
Yeah.
Wow.
Still going. We're coming up on a
Congratulations.
decade.
That's a,
Wow, that's surprising. I can't believe you were able to keep it together so long.
no kidding.
50% of marriages end in divorce.
It's real high risk.
Yeah, real high. No, really. No kidding.
Wow. No, but one of the
Active
things he
listening.
would actually have us like actively like practice listening in front of him and would give us like whatever issue we were struggling with
Coaching.
at the time, and he would actually coach us on how to do it. And it was a little over the top. It was a little awkward because
Yeah.
it's kind of forced, but it is a good practice. But you know, asking the question and then actually shutting your mouth and looking them in the eye. And then, and this was actually the biggest part that I saw actually produce a lot of fruit in my marriage, and I still
Okay.
carry this into my relationship
shows
with
that
her
fruit.
and with other relationships, is not only asking the question and then being quiet and listening and making eye contact, but then repeating back to her
That's the
what she
biggest thing.
said to make sure that she knows I fully understood her. Because here's the thing with listening and communicating is it's not enough for you to know what they mean. You need to make them feel heard. Because this is what can happen a lot of the times, especially for somebody like me that's very argumentative and bad at listening,
Right.
is I can like, oh yeah, I understand what they're saying before they finish their sentences. So then I cut them off and then I give them my rebuttal right away. Well, yeah, you might understand them. Also, you might be misunderstanding them because you haven't listened to them fully.
Right.
But even if you're correct in understanding them based off half their sentence, that's not listening if you are rebutting them and responding to them without letting them finish and without you, and that's the key part, repeating back what they said so that they feel heard. And I think the more you could ask questions and then repeat back, you're not just listening and understanding, but you're making the other person feel heard, and you're ensuring that there is no miscommunications. Because I'll tell you this, sometimes you think you understand somebody, and then when you repeat back, and they'll say, oh, actually, no, I didn't mean it like this. I actually meant it more like this. And then you get clarification, and then when there's more clarity, there can be more unity. So there's the alliteration. Slip
There you
that
go.
in there.
There he is.
Nice.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Any other thoughts on that, though? The listening and
I
the
think that's
communication?
like active listening 101 is
Yeah.
not just hearing it, but being able to regurgitate back to them the important parts. And that lets them know that not only am I hearing you, but I'm processing it. And then it allows for them to clarify, because what you're doing when you're going through that process is you're telling them not just what they said, but how you processed it. And so they're able to actually clarify it in a helpful manner. And that's what helps relationships just
And like they always
stay
say,
open and clear, and so
That's good. I just interrupted
you totally did.
I-
But it's okay.
Well, you know what they always say. What I was gonna say,
No. What I was gonna say was
just shut your mouth. No, it's the whole thing of how most of communication is nonverbal,
Yeah.
as they always say. It's kind of the classic line, but that's why I think looking at them in the eye, head nodding, not rolling your eyes, because like you could totally be like listening to somebody and understanding them, and then you roll your eyes.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's not
Ooh,
good.
that's bad.
Because then you're communicating, you disgust me, or you're annoying me, or I
Right.
don't believe you.
yeah.
And you're communicating with your eyes in ways that aren't so good. So I think being able to communicate with your body in a healthy and helpful way when in communication, communicate with your body, and Griffin communicates with his body.
Yeah, he might communicate with your body.
Yeah.
We'll cut that out.
No, we're not cutting that out. We're leaving it in. This is a good podcast. Unfiltered
So,
dialogue.
How much time we have?
We got about 10 minutes left. Quick question on
Yeah.
the communication with your body.
We're not
Anyways.
cutting any of this out.
We're
not cutting any of
question.
this
Quick question. Do you think that should
That could be
come?
a Michael Jackson song, communicating with your
I'm
body.
pretty sure that is a song.
Probably
Let's
is.
rock your body.
Oh, okay, there you
That's
go.
no, that's Justin Timberlake. Close.
Rock your body.
Anyways, do you feel like communication with the body is a active choice that you have to make and like
Yes, it
really
is.
think about it, or
Yes, it is.
or is it a heart thing? I always struggle with that, where I have to make a choice to be like, don't react, don't do your eyes like that.
I think
even
that's
though
walking
even
in
though
the
what she
spirit
just
instead
said,
of walking in the flesh.
yeah,
So
okay,
if you're walking
but
in the flesh,
yeah.
your body language is going to be really bad. But if you are walking by the Spirit and you're letting the Spirit dictate to you what you say and think, because if you're right, the mind governed by the flesh is death, the mind governed by the Spirit is life and peace. So if you're thinking right, then you're going to gesture and speak right. And so I think it starts with the mind and allowing your mind to be governed by God's word and for your mind to be governed by the Spirit. Because I know for me, when my mind is not governed by the Spirit, my words and also my communication with my body is it's going to be off. It's going to be bad. So
The natural.
then all the
Right.
nonverbal cues are going to be really bad. In addition to the verbal words, all the words that come out of my mouth, and none of it's going to be good.
Right.
But when my mind is right, then naturally,
Yeah.
my verbal
I-
and nonverbal.
I want my
communication is
authentic.
better.
I want my authentic reactions to be
Yeah.
Christ-like reactions, right? Both
Yes.
nonverbal and verbal.
But it is natural for both our words and our nonverbal communication to be not Christ-like.
Is it? Is
It's
that natural?
It's not
I
because
don't
right.
know.
What
I
Jesus said,
disagree.
He said, "Out of the heart comes what comes out of your mouth."
100%.
So it's all from the heart.
But if you're in Christ and you're growing and your heart is becoming softer and softer
Yes,
and
it
softer as you walk with Christ, I believe there's a point where
Yes, that's true.
your natural
you
reaction
become
is
a
going to
more
be
Christ-like person. You're a
Right.
better Christ-like character.
right.
But that takes a long time, and even
It does.
then, you'll still always have your flesh that will.
Oh, of course,
constantly
of
be
course.
with
You're not
you.
gonna be perfect, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Anyway.
no, that's good. That's a good point. Though.
Feels like
I
there's
think
some
you.
tension here that we might need.
yeah, there's some disagreement.
Actually,
Yes,
what do you mean by
the
that?
conflict?
When you
That's the whole
said
plan.
that,
I don't know if you
when
saw my
you said
body
that-
language,
Yeah.
but I got incredibly
Well, he's
uncomfortable.
very open.
I saw
and
your
you're
pupils
closed off.
dilate.
Yeah. But it's it's the principle.
My
of it's
tongue
not
swelled
just,
up a bit.
What you say, it's how you say it, and a part
Yeah.
of how you say it is not just your inflection and tone,
Yeah.
but it's your body language.
Well, so let's just give an example of that.
And we got about 5 minutes left, just FYI. So let's
Hey,
get ready to land the plane.
tell me more about what you just said. Oh yeah, tell me more right now.
Whoa.
Yeah. So it's not just what you say;
You just had a
how you say
visceral
it.
reaction.
it's how
to that.
you say it.
Right.
Or let's give
Yeah.
another example. Somebody says something to you. Maybe they're sharing their heart with you, and they're sharing why they're upset with you, and you go, "Oh, I'm really sorry you feel that way."
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm so sorry you feel that way. Rolling your eyes. Yeah, it's not just what you say; it's how you say it. So communicating. I mean, it's like an onion. It's multi-layered.
It's true.
So.
Yeah, and I think that there are people though that lack self-awareness.
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
So there is a gap between how they think they're
They might be
presenting
saying,
themselves,
Yeah.
and how they're saying something,
Yeah.
versus reality
Right.
of how it actually is being.
I admit I fall into that category.
Really?
Yeah, I think I mean,
Yeah.
my wife tells me, "Hey,
I agree.
hey, watch it,
Yeah.
watch it, buddy."
I just want to affirm that. No, I'm kidding.
No, but I feel like when I talk, especially with my wife, and even you guys too, I talk with such. I'll call it passion, right? And it could even be on my face. Like some people also just they don't rest with like a smile. They just have like a naturally angry,
angry
face. I feel like I have that.
Christian way to
I feel like I have a resting
Actually,
angry
I don't know.
face.
I don't feel that way
I don't feel that way at all.
about the resting
About
face.
myself?
About your
About me?
resting.
Oh,
No,
okay.
it's your
I
tone.
think it's in my tone
yeah,
as
that's
well.
what it is. I would agree.
I
with
come
that.
off with an aggressive tone. I could be saying something
You
super
come out the gate hot.
right,
Yeah.
but I'm not even saying anything.
You're not-
Happens all the time in football.
Totally.
Happens all the time in football.
Totally.
Where I'll be like, I don't know. I'll just say something that I actually am not meaning in any malice, but I say it with such
just comes out
passion,
hot,
or like like a grunt in my voice or something. That the person's like, "Hey, geez, dude, watch it." I'm like, "Oh no, I just meant like, I was just telling you something. I'm
Yeah.
sorry." I think so. I fall in that category too.
Yeah.
I am kind of a self-aware of it though, but I don't know
Yeah.
when I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I think we all have that. You don't know when you're doing something. You don't know when you're doing something.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't like the way
But
you
that's
just pointed
so.
at me.
I think this is a good way.
You don't know
I think.
anything when you
Yeah. I think this is actually a good way to close the conversation because why do you need to be in healthy relationships and have proximity with people that love you? It's because when we're around each other, we see the best of each other and we see the worst.
Yeah.
And when we encounter the worst parts of one another, we're able to lovingly approach that and either cover that with grace or not, instead of steering clear, going into the conflict and talking about it in a healthy way. And so our heart for you guys is that you would hopefully learn how to communicate like Christ, how to navigate your conversations like Jesus would. And we're all, you know, trying to get better and we're not trying to project perfection, but we're trying to progress, trying to learn and grow. And it's not easy sometimes. Relationships are messy.
I was just about to say that.
They are.
And I
They're
think
messy.
the last verse I'll share
Don't
is
avoid it.
the Bible says love covers over a multitude of sins. And like you were saying, relationships are messy.
Yeah.
When you go through conflict, whether it's unhealthy or healthy conflict, you're going to step on each other's toes. So the bottom line is you can get through that tunnel of conflict and get to the other side and have a close relationship if you just allow the love of Christ to cover over those multitude of sins. And if his love can cover over it, you'll be closer because of it. You can get through any conflict.
That's good. Well, we love you guys. Thanks again for listening. If you haven't yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow, listen, rate, review, comment, do all the things. We love you guys so much. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Whoa.